In the heart of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a precious mineral fuels our modern lives. Cobalt, an essential component in our smartphones, laptops, and electric cars, powers the world's technological revolution. But behind this shiny facade lies a dark reality. Welcome to the dark side of cobalt mining in the DRC. Join us as we delve into a story of exploitation, environmental devastation, and human suffering. Unregulated artisanal mining practices, hazardous working conditions, and child labor have plagued the cobalt mines of the DRC. We will hear stories of those living in the shadow of the mines, whose lives have been impacted by this lucrative but devastating industry. But amidst the darkness, there is hope. Discover the tireless efforts of activists, organizations, and the global community fighting for a more ethical and sustainable cobalt industry. Shed light on the hidden realities and explore the path towards a brighter future. This is the dark side of cobalt mining in the DRC, a journey that will change your perception and ignite a call for change. So don't miss out on this ride when a singer unfolds. How can I go on without introducing the world's richest country in terms of wealth through minerals and natural resources? The Democratic Republic of Congo, Africa's second largest country, where most of the world's raw mineral deposits remain untapped and are worth an estimated 24 trillion. These deposits include the world's largest coltan reserves and massive amounts of cobalt you can't find anywhere else. Both of these minerals are used in electronics, although coltan is used mainly in aviation and defense industries, whereas cobalt is mainly used as a key ingredient in lithium-ion batteries. As a chemical element, cobalt is a raw material that has a wide range of uses across many industries. Apart from being such a significant component in rechargeable batteries and a byproduct of nickel and copper mining. Because of its cruciality, demand is anticipated to drive a 10% compound annual growth rate for the metal between now and 2030. This means the mineral is extremely valuable. Pure cobalt, however, does not occur on Earth. Although cobalt-bearing minerals are common globally, the mineral is largely mined in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, but also in several other countries including China, Russia, and Canada. Through processing, cobalt can be used as the most expensive raw material inside rechargeable batteries, and so it is Congo where mobile technology begins. The Democratic Republic of Congo has the largest cobalt reserves in the world, at some 4 million metric tons as of 2022. As the total global cobalt reserves amount to more than 80 million metric tons, it then means that Congo alone accounts for more than half of the world's reserves of this metal. Unfortunately, it would seem like Congo is cursed by its natural wealth. The majority of the people in Congo have not benefited from its riches. This doom is made possible by several factors such as a long history of conflict within the country, exploitation, political disruptions and instability, corruption, the authoritarian rule that has led to a grave, ongoing human crisis which continues to force considerable populations out of their homeland. Those who stay lack from economic opportunities resulting from a legacy of entrenched political conflict, as well as high rates of malnutrition, illness, and poor education, making the country one of the hardest places on earth to raise a family. Such conditions have made it seem normal for more than 70% of the country's citizens, which is just over 60 million people, to do any job even if it pays as little as $2 a day. Amidst all this, the rechargeable battery economy has for long sought to take advantage of Congo's cobalt and a huge force of miners that provide almost free labor in this modern-day slavery setting. During 2021, DRC was on the top of the list of cobalt exporters after a massive chunk worth over $4 billion left the country. Because of its important role towards a more sustainable renewable energy future, cobalt mining is happening regardless of all this. The problem is that it has a very dark side, and if you stick around, you are going to learn all about it. The primary dark side of this precious metal comes from how it is extracted. Artisanal mining refers to small-scale mining activities that are commonly conducted with basic tools and equipment while involving individuals or small groups of miners. The activity typically involves manual labor in traditional mining techniques without the use of advanced machinery or industrial processes. Artisanal mining is characterized by its informal and decentralized nature, often taking place in remote and economically marginalized areas such as Congo. It plays a significant role in many countries as a source of livelihood and can involve extraction of various minerals such as gold, diamonds, gemstones, or cobalt in this case, without using the right tools. However, artisanal mining presents challenges related to environmental sustainability, labor conditions, and social issues that need immediate addressing. Unfortunately, the national law does not outright forbid artisanal mining. The regulation of artisanal mining activities is primarily the responsibility of individual countries, meaning each nation has the authority to establish its laws and regulations regarding mining practices, including artisanal mining. And because of that, artisanal mining became a common practice in the Congo, majorly in Kinshasa, where this malpractice is predominantly happening. To understand how dangerous this is, you'll have to look at some of the methods used by artisanal miners while carrying out this activity. But before that, I want to make myself clear. Methods employed by artisanal miners during cobalt mining may vary depending on specific circumstances and, of course, the resources available. However, these four methods provide a general overview of the techniques that are commonly used when mining cobalt in the DRC. First, let's look at manual excavation. Using this method, artisanal miners deploy basic hand tools such as shovels, picks, and hammers to manually excavate cobalt-rich material from the ground after digging pits, trenches, or tunnels to access cobalt deposits. Second, once cobalt-bearing material is obtained, artisanal miners often rely on hand-sorting methods to separate cobalt ores or minerals from waste rock. Here, they visually inspect and manually separate the cobalt-rich material based on its appearance and characteristics. Then, washing and concentration. At this stage, artisanal miners use rudimentary washing techniques to remove impurities and concentrate cobalt ores by typically washing the mineral in water, allowing lighter particles to be washed away, while heavier cobalt-rich material settles at the bottom. Lastly, gravity separation. This includes methods such as sileusing or panning. Either one can be used to separate cobalt-bearing material from lighter sediment or gangue minerals. These methods are used to exploit the difference in density between cobalt ores and other materials, which allows cobalt-rich material to be separated and then collected. You can say that this looks dangerous, but it is more than just looking dangerous. It is dangerous. So why is it highly used anyway? Artisanal mining is a penny-wage route to boost production. Just imagine being in a part of the world where millions of people barely get $1 or $2 a day. I'm talking about people who are grindingly poor and will accept almost any labor arrangement just to survive. Well, you put them in a tight pit, cram them with 10,000 other people and pay them a couple of dollars, and they just start producing thousands of tons of cobalt every year. for almost no wages. And that, my friends, is not legal, but it is happening. Artisanal mining is known to involve individuals, groups, families, or cooperatives carrying out a deadly task without mechanization. This means using minimal or basic tools to unearth minerals, which makes the sector a higher labor-intensive that requires low levels of investment, something that explains how mining became some involuntary servitude in Congo that powers our mobile world and generates billions of dollars for fortune-seeking bounders. For artisanal miners in the DRC, working long hours under dangerous and exploitative conditions would only seem to be the tip of the iceberg. Even this economically vicious community, there is still money to be made regardless of the circumstances. Because of the country's political problems that have infected the country with long-term instability, the hunger for mineral wealth has allowed room for militia formations. So now, these armed groups have been involved in cobalt mining in the DRC and have been operating in several regions for decades, often funded through illegal mining operations. Militias control mining sites, charge fees for access, and sometimes even force workers to mine under their supervision, which is stressful and brutal. The profits from the sale of cobalt are a significant source of funding for these armed groups, allowing them to buy weapons and ammunition, pay off their fighters, and continue their violent activities. In some cases, the groups have even engaged in direct conflict over control of mining areas, leading to further violence and instability in many regions. The involvement of militias in the cobalt mining industry within Congo has been widely documented by human rights organizations and the media. In some cases, mining companies have been accused of knowingly purchasing cobalt from suppliers who take advantage of child labor or work with armed groups. Some children indeed go into mines themselves, but still, this is made possible by dangerous life challenges, and in search of $1 to spend on basic needs, going in mines voluntarily becomes the only option for some of the children in the DRC. However, in this war-trapped country, the majority of children are driven by militias. Sometimes they are called commandos and they are known for abducting children and also trafficking them into forced recruitment and prostitution within the mines, and sometimes beyond. This problem is not faced by children within Kinshasa alone, where most of mining takes place, but even in other parts of Congo. Militias take children from near and hundreds of miles far away and then distribute them through several militia networks down into copper and cobalt mines to dig. And as they dig and earn their dollar out too, that's what funds the militia groups. So children are the most heavily exploited of all people down there. They are the most vulnerable and oftentimes trafficked and exploited even in very violent circumstances. That being said, however, allow me to remind you that children are not the only vulnerable group here. Since the mining industry in this country has been plagued by conflict, corruption, and exploitation for so many years, women in mining communities are particularly vulnerable to forced prostitution. One of the most significant issues facing women in mining communities in the DRC is sexual violence. Women working in or near mines are at high risk of being raped or assaulted by other workers and armed groups operating in the area. Violence is often perpetrated as means of exerting power and control over women and their families, or as a way of punishing them for perceived wrongdoings. In addition to sexual violence, women in mining communities are also vulnerable to other forms of exploitation and abuse. Many women work as informal miners, either on their own or as part of a cooperative, and are often paid very low wages for their labor compared to men. Most women are also forced to work long hours in dangerous and unhealthy conditions without access to protective gear or adequate health care. Furthermore, women in mining communities often lack access to basic services such as education, health care, and clean water. This makes them defenseless against illness and disease and can also limit their opportunities for economic and social advancement. The more you learn about this whole thing, the more you realize the vulnerability of women in mining communities of Congo is a complex issue that requires attention from both the government and the mining industry, which is why efforts must be made to ensure women are protected from violence and exploitation of any form and that they have access to resources and services they need to thrive. But for all the works in different mines, life is extremely at risk, whether you are a man, woman, or child. Miners in the Democratic Republic of Congo face a greater number of risks related to their work, including cave-ins, since mining operations in many mines of Congo are often conducted in underground tunnels and shafts, and we know that these tunnels and shafts can be unstable and prone to collapse, putting miners at risk of injury or death from cave-ins and other accidents. There are also countless cases of exposure to toxic chemicals during mining activities. Toxic chemicals like mercury, cyanide, and sulfuric acid have for long caused harmful effects on human health, so miners who come in contact with these chemicals through inhalation, ingestion, or skin contact face dreadful impacts, mostly being respiratory diseases. For example, silicosis that comes from inhaling dust and other airborne particles that often bring chronic lung diseases and other health problems among miners. Another problem here is the lack of protective gear, an issue that challenges the majority of miners since there is no access to adequate protective gear such as helmets, gloves, and respirators, a problem that increases their risk of injury and illness. On top of that, most artisanal miners in the DRC lack access to basic medical care, which can make it difficult to prevent, determine, and treat work-related injuries and illnesses. It is therefore obvious that the risks faced by miners in Congo are significant and can have serious consequences for their health and safety. We have seen issues faced by artisanal miners in many mines conducting cobalt mining, but apart from affecting people in all these ways, cobalt mining in Congo has significant impacts on the environment too. As the world is leading producer of cobalt, the DRC faces enormous environmental breakdown and pollution. One of the primary environmental impacts of cobalt mining within the country is deforestation, since the mineral is mainly found in areas with rich biodiversity. Clearing forests for mining activities to take place destroys habitats and threatens local wildlife. Additionally, in a few areas where heavy machinery is used, mining contributes to soil erosion and degradation, which further reduces the ecological resilience of the region. Another significant impact of cobalt mining is the release of toxic waste and pollutants into the environment. We all know that cobalt mining involves the use of acids and other chemicals to extract the metal from ore, but these chemicals can leach into the surrounding waterways and contaminate the few available drinking water sources, but also harm aquatic ecosystems. Remember, the toxic waste produced by the mining process can also pose a health risk to nearby communities. And finally, the energy-intensive process of mining and refining cobalt contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, exacerbating climate change. The energy required for the mining, processing, and transportation of cobalt adds to the carbon footprint of the global electronics industry. But cobalt being the key factor in a transition towards sustainable renewable energy and a huge income generator, all of the evils surrounding it are somehow downplayed by almost everyone, and so the mineral is still extracted and exported despite the huge cost it has on human lives and the environment. The cobalt pipeline refers to the complex supply chain that connects cobalt mining in the DRC to the production of consumer goods such as electronic devices in other countries. The mineral continues to be mined by small-scale miners who sell ore to traders and middlemen, who then sell it to smelters for processing. The refined cobalt is then sold to manufacturers who incorporate it into their products before they are sold to consumers. Unfortunately, we have seen that the cobalt supply chain is plagued by issues such as child labor, human rights abuses, and environmental degradation. Many of the small-scale mines in the DRC continue to employ child labor, and workers are often subjected to dangerous working conditions and long hours without adequate pay or protection. The mining process can also result in significant environmental damage. As I explained earlier, it is obvious that there is no single solution to the complex challenges associated with cobalt mining in Congo, but there are several strategies that could be deployed to address the key problems. I think if they could promote ethical and sustainable sourcing as one of the solutions, companies and consumers can support responsible mining practices by working with certified suppliers and inspections of their supply chains. I believe that this could help ensure that cobalt is mined without practices of child labor, worker exploitation, and environmental degradation. Another potential solution can be supporting economic development in Congo. This could help alternative livelihoods for people who are currently working in the informal mining sector, since it involves promoting industries and supporting entrepreneurship, a practice that can provide people with alternative sources of income other than relying on this deadly activity. I also think that addressing the root cause of conflict and instability in the country, which are fueled by a range of factors such as poverty, trembling governance, and ethnic tensions, could help create a more stable and peaceful environment in which responsible mining practices can also thrive. Lastly, the demand for cobalt can be reduced by investing in recycling and a circular economy, as this could help to reduce the amount of virgin cobalt that needs to be mined, which can bring more relief for the environment to heal and meet fewer impacts of mining. We can all agree that drafting effective policies and enforcing them could be a key to taking militias out of business and putting an end to child labor. Lack of regulation has promoted military groups that generally encourage child labor, since there is no easy way to trace and certify sources of cobalt. Being able to identify cobalt from violent sources or with felonious connections would help legit buyers to avoid dealing with illegitimate sellers. The problem here is addressing the challenges associated with cobalt mining in Congo will require a coordinated effort from governments, companies, civil society, and local communities, which seems impossible if you look at the fact that all involved parties are blinded by profits. But if they would consider it, working together to promote ethical and sustainable sourcing practices, support economic development, address root causes of conflict and instability, and invest in recycling and a circular economy, might be the only possible way to create a more just and sustainable future for all. For now, all of this is a long shot, since all players are focusing on investing little and earning as many dollars as they possibly can. Speaking of dollars, things are not good for the currency. And in this next video, learn why countries are getting rid of it. Thanks for watching.